Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
Glad to have with us on our live Newsmaker line, Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes. Assemblywoman Byrnes, thank you for joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure, Brian. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we've had it all over in the news, the violations of Article 10. It seems that is it the Article 10 siting boards that are skipping out on getting local members of the boards? Is it the Public Service Commission? Who is it exactly?
Well, it's going to be the Democratic leaders of the Assembly and the Senate, followed up closely by Governor Cuomo. Because basically, the first thing that our towns do and counties do is they're required to send a letter to the legislative leaders in Albany, in the Assembly and the Senate, recommending names to be put on the siting board. One is supposed to be chosen by the Speaker of the Assembly, the other by the head of the Senate. If they fail to act, then it goes to the governor, and he's the one who makes the appointments from the lists provided to the siting board. But if he doesn't act, then there's just no local representation on the siting board, and they can run forward with the 5 bureaucrats out of Albany with no local input.
I didn't realize it was that complicated, so it's got to go through the governor's office?
Yeah, well, first to the Senate and the Assembly, and then if they abdicate and don't appoint anybody, then it goes to the governor. Then the governor has 45 days to act. But if he doesn't, it's not like the recommendations automatically become on. They automatically become off. And all of a sudden, across the state, back in June, one of my fellow assemblymen out in the Tonawanda area did some research. They determined that 19 out of 25 of these large-scale projects had no local representations on the boards.
19 out of 25, that's the majority. Talking to Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes. Now, from what I understand, both supporters and critics of alternative energy want the local, they agree in it, they want the local members from the towns on the siting boards.
Absolutely. Actually, everybody. That's one issue that everyone agrees on. No matter what your position on any particular project, we need local representation so that people can be on that board in Albany expressing the local concerns, how the community feels, how any given project will affect the spot that it's being planned for. And the only way to get this local input is to have local members on the board. And almost universally across the state, they're just failing to act, and by failing to appoint, they're automatically excluding our local people from being able to say what we need in our own communities. And, like I said, and there was, I got a call from one of my towns asking me whatever happened to those letters we wrote, and that's what led me to find out that out of the 3 projects in my area, that not one of them had any local members on it. But I also was checking because Barron Winds, which is a large project in the Dansville, Cohocton, and Wayland area, back when that one first was through the procedure of appointing what they call ad hoc local members, the Senate actually did appoint one gentleman from the community to be on that siting board, but that gentleman resigned last October and was never replaced. And the Assembly never appointed anyone, and the governor never did. So there was one person, though, and that person, though, resigned and is gone. So right now on the Barron Winds project, there's no local representation. The Canisteo Wind project does have one local representative that was appointed by the Senate. And this was back, these Senate appointments were back when the Republicans were controlling the Senate. So the Republicans then did make appointments out of the Senate. And, but once the Democrats took over, now in the Senate and the Assembly, no appointments are being made. And there's more projects coming. Prattsburg has a project that's just in the initial stages, so it hasn't gotten as far as a request for local representation. But good people in Prattsburg need to keep their antennas up to know that this is going on when it gets to that point. And given the new climate change legislation that was just passed by Albany, I think it's pretty much of a guarantee there's going to be more of these proposed projects. So we really got to be on our toes and propose some legislation in order to eliminate this gap, because it calls the Article 10 procedure calls on the Senate, Assembly, and the governor to make appointments, but there's no ramifications if they fail to do it. So one of my proposals, and it's being introduced today in the Assembly, is that if the governor, as that last fall gap, fails to appoint, he must send a letter to the municipalities, which isn't happening now, explaining why he failed to act, and then the municipalities should have time to resubmit either the same names or new names so that the process can go on again, and we don't end up with just 5 bureaucrats in Albany constituting a quorum running forward without us on the boards.
Well, I hope that these 5 bureaucrats have pretty good maps of the areas around here that they're going to be putting the wind projects on. I would think if that's not the case, they're going to be inconveniencing the wind farmers and those who are going to be involved with solar energy. I would think it would be a little difficult to be in Albany and decide what goes where and what turbine goes where and what solar panels go on what house without actually knowing the area itself.
Oh, absolutely. That's why it's critical. It's critical that on these siting boards we have local representatives. Every project's different, and the land that it's being proposed to be put on is different. Each project is so unique that you need, and we have to mandate that these local members be there so that all of our interests and our concerns of everybody are voiced in Albany so that we get the right projects in the right places for the right reasons. My concern is that, especially with this new climate change legislation, that the Democrats are going to be so hell-bent on getting projects through that if we don't have people there to ensure that the right projects are done in the right places, that who knows what could happen.
They could throw extra ones in, is what you're saying, more wind turbines, more solar panels than originally planned. That's your fear?
Who knows? That's the problem. Without somebody from our communities who has a seat at the table, literally, who has a seat at that table, to find out what's going on and report back, and also to voice our local concerns, our local needs, there's no telling what could happen.
Yes, and you do make a valid point there, Assemblywoman, because the pressure from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her influence on the Democratic Party in Albany, in New York State government, the AOC's influence is pretty huge, so I can see them wanting to put extra turbines and extra solar panels in more than originally planned. Right now I'm looking at WETM's website, mytwintiers.com. They're just reporting this morning that the 8-point wind project, which is Greenwood and West Union, has been approved, and that'll tie into Hornellsville, to the substation in Hornellsville. So it's just, wind projects are getting approved quite frequently in the area. If anyone has concerns about this, who do they talk to? Public Service Commission, State Senate, Assembly, the governor's office? Where do you go?
Well, that's why I did this proposed legislation, and I can't imagine, quite frankly, why, especially if green energy is so important to the Democrats, why they wouldn't want to participate in this piece of legislation also, because it does ensure that even projects in their area have local input. It seems to me universal that anybody in any community should feel and should rightly feel that their voices are heard, their concerns are taken into account before these projects are done. Because once the projects are done, let's be real, we are talking about very, very large projects, either solar projects up in the northern part of my district, wind projects more down in the Steuben area, and that's why it's incredibly important that we do something to stop this now and to voice our concerns now before any more projects get approved without us knowing the details.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break talking to Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes about some Article 10 violations. Stay with us.
Are you more than $10,000 in debt? Feel like you're on a never-ending treadmill, staying in one place and never getting ahead with those minimum payments? Don't let the credit card companies bully you anymore. There are programs in place to help you get free of your debt, and you don't have to pay the entire amount you owe. The program at Total Financial Freedom can help you get debt-free in months instead of decades. Call Total Financial now at 800-899-8922. That's 800-899-8922.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. That's why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
Try ZipRecruiter now for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn. How's it look for today? How's it look for the weekend?
Brian, today it doesn't look that great. We're going to be dealing with some passing cloudiness and the potential for some showers. But boy, right now the weekend looks outstanding. Big Canadian high building southward into the Plain States this morning, Brian. The frontal boundaries just off to our north and west. We're already seeing some widely scattered showers over parts of the southern tier that extend back across Lake Erie into Ohio and southern Michigan. This will all press southward through the area today, and then drier weather will start to filter in tonight and tomorrow. Today, clouds give way to partial sun. Watch for a passing shower or two. We're 70 to 75. Sunrise this morning was at 6:25. It'll set tonight at 8 o'clock. It is the last sunset at 8 o'clock until we get into next year. Partly cloudy, some patchy fog, cool overnight, 50 to 55. Sunshine, much less humid, cooler for tomorrow, 70 to 75. Clear with patchy fog tomorrow night near 50. Some of the outlying communities down into the 40s. Then looking ahead to Saturday, Brian, lots of sun, 70 to 75. We're sunny Sunday too, with highs in the 70s.
Thank you, Rob. Back with Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes live on our Newsmaker line this morning. Assemblywoman, looking at the Syracuse Post websites, Cuomo keeps justifying license plate changes during New York State visit. Another headline, Cuomo defends new New York license plates and those $25 fees. Now, yesterday we had in the news that Assemblyman Phil Palmisano was criticizing the license plate contest that the governor has going. And we were reading that Assemblyman Palmisano says that he feels that the contest is a distraction from these fees going up. I got an email from some Democrat officials in Albany who said that that's not the case, that the $25 fees aren't new, that's a standard in the law. What was it? Vehicle Traffic Law 401, the governor's office or the Democrats cited there. Wondering what your thoughts are on this issue, Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes.
Oh, I agree with Assemblyman Palmisano 100%. This is absolutely outrageous. It wasn't that long ago we switched or tried switching over from the white plates to the gold plates, and I've always resisted that. Every time I renew, I keep saying, no, I'll keep my old plates because I don't want to pay for new ones when the ones I have are perfectly good. And, so now we're going to go to ones that have a picture of his, the newly named bridge for in honor of his father on them. I don't think so. There's no reason. With all of the other expenses that we have in this state to pay that kind of money to reissue brand new license plates, jack up the charge so that everyone has to do it. Right now, I have a box when I renew. Do you want to change to the new plates, the gold plates? No. That's one fee. Do you want to? Yes, another fee. But to mandate it, that you have no choice but to all switch over to these new plates, I find, like I said, absolutely outrageous. Again, it's just an egotistical example, another example of the governor's ultra ego. You know, it was the same when even over after Superstorm Sandy, when they had to retile one of the tunnels, and they had spent millions of dollars on the traditional beige tiles, and all of a sudden the governor stepped in and demanded that the MTA down there buy ones that were also gold and blue, so that there could be blue and gold stripes along with the beige, the state colors, jacking up the price by millions and millions of dollars for no reason other than his ego. So, I mean, these things, when we have people who are in desperate straits in our communities, who need services that we can't provide, who need drugs and alcohol treatment, that we don't have enough money to provide counselors, so many issues that a little bit of money may not fix, but it sure would go a long way to help our constituents, and what we're doing is worrying about license plates.
Talking with Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes this morning on Newsmaker, also from the Syracuse Post, reading a story here about how New York State, New York City, Connecticut, and Vermont sued the federal government, filing a lawsuit earlier this week over new Trump administration rules that blocks green cards for many immigrants who use public assistance, including Medicaid, food stamps, and housing vouchers. Any thoughts on that lawsuit against Washington?
Yeah, I don't understand, again, why we need to get involved in federal matters. That's just a waste of our state's time, its money. We need to be spending our money here, taking care of our citizens, our constituents, and not just in this vendetta against Trump and the Trump administration.
Governor Cuomo is in the news a lot these days. He was at the state fair this week. He's talked about various issues. One of the new laws I see, it's an amendment to a law, the Child Victims Act. The Child Victims Act was passed earlier, I believe this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Assemblywoman, and went into effect, last week. And what it does, the biggest thing it does, I should say, is gets rid of the statute of limitations on sex abuse cases. Little backstory on that. Senator Kathy Young was opposed to it because she was afraid of phony lawsuits against big organizations like the Boy Scouts and the Catholic Church. Senator Young did not win on that issue. She had legislation she was trying to get passed that was similar legislation, except it didn't get rid of the statute of limitations. Well, now I'm reading this morning online that on the Empire Report New York website that Governor Cuomo has expanded it so more victims or alleged victims can file lawsuits. Any thoughts on that, Assemblywoman Byrnes?
You can get him. Yeah, when the legislation came through, we all looked at that particularly carefully, and I certainly did as an attorney, because any time you extend the statute of limitations, there are problems with that. The reason we have statute of limitations is because normally you consider that there's an appropriate time within which, if there was some relief that you're seeking, that you should have stepped up to the plate. But obviously, we've learned in the last few years, mostly, about a lot of abuses that have gone on in the Boy Scouts, in the Catholic Church, and in other institutions as well. So I think that is what was the incentive behind this piece of legislation. A lot of concern about people who were afraid decades ago to speak up, that in today's day and age, where people are becoming more empowered to talk about abuses in their past, that they're now in a position to step up where before they weren't, but yet the statute of limitations has gone by. Now it's extended. The problem, though, is all these good people who may very well have been victimized still are going to have issues with having to prove their case. And, over time, especially over decades, memories can fail, evidence, if it even existed, can be lost or destroyed, and it may be very difficult, if not impossible, for some of these people who, many of whom have probably truly been victimized, to ever be able to establish by the legal standard what they need to in a court of law. So, while I'm thankful that they have the opportunity to step up and to be empowered and to seek redress for what's happened in their past, I do have concerns that once all these cases we hear about actually get to a court of law, what's going to happen? And that's something we're just going to have to wait and see how that plays out. But certainly it is important for anyone, if it was decades ago, Brian, or if it's something that's happened recently, adult or child, to always step up, to understand that you must report when something has happened to you, and you shouldn't be afraid, because there are good people, our district attorneys, and in our courts who will do everything they can to rectify a wrong. So I really do encourage anyone who has been victimized to step up to the plate, make it known, and sooner better than later is always better in order to prove what happened.
With that, we have to leave it. Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes, thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate the opportunity, especially on the large-scale solar and wind issues. I'll keep you abreast of what happens, because I do think that not just in our area, but this is going to have statewide implications, and we'll keep you posted.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. Please stay on the line. It's AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.